Budget discussion.
Can you talk a little bit about the wages as far as, it looks like we're going to increase the overtime, decrease the standard wages, but
Sure.
then we've added in event wages of 21,000. So if you can give us an overview of what's going on there.
So obviously, this is my
That's
first
right.
year doing this a little bit. So what we did with overtime, it kind of reflects what the actual true cost should be, right? Right now, we're running very minimum staffing. If I required somebody to fill a lot of these shifts, we wouldn't have anybody because they would be exhausted, right? So when we're up to full staff, we should have 2 officers during the day, 2 officers in the evening, and a sergeant that overlaps. And right now we're running we're running 1 shift. So they have 2 shifts. So they, for example, or should I say 2 crews? 1 sergeant runs 1 crew, 1 sergeant runs the other crew. So right now I have a crew that has a sergeant and a patrol officer. That's it, right? And then I have a crew that has a patrol officer, a sergeant, and a patrol officer. And right now, like today, the sergeant, we had somebody on vacation. So instead of forcing that overtime, which I could, we were putting he adjusted his schedule, which right now, we have a lot of people that are cooperative doing that sort of thing, but they wouldn't have to do that. So when I looked at the overtime, I looked at it as what it would actually reflect if we were actually full staff and, we were actually filling those shifts so that we maintained a minimum coverage. And that's really important because like yesterday we had 16 calls and we had a missing person, we had a dead body. It was overwhelming and we just don't have the staffing right now to do that. So once we get there, right now I have 3 people that have conditional employment hire. So that's really good. In this world, it's really hard to hire people. And once we hire them, it takes a year to get them on the road by themselves. So this isn't like a quick fix. That's my biggest complaint from the officers right now is getting officers. So that's kind of where my overtime is. I did it as what it actually would be, not that, we possibly wouldn't spend that amount of money, but that's what we should look at, like what it actually is going to cost us for overtime.
Well, naturally, as you know, everyone knows in the room that overtime is a lot more expensive on a per hour basis than it would be. And so I think last year, if I remember right, we had actually add officers because of the limitation on hours.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem is I don't know that we might have added 1 officer and because it's tough hiring people. And the other problem that you had was nobody wants to come here if they didn't know who the chief was going to be. That's a big what if. So, I think that's established a little bit. That's why we've been able to hire, conditionally hire 3 people because they still have a bunch of steps to get through. So that's tough.
Yep.
So certainly. Under wages, pretty much all the wages are set by the union schedule. Obviously, other than my salary and the administrative assistant and the reserve, I increased the reserve pay. And the reason I did that was to kind of coincide with what other reserves pays were. The reserve world is coming to an end. Like it's not something that we're hiring reserves. They're just not there. We have 1 reserve right now and he serves a great purpose for us. He's able to do some firearm stuff with us. He's able to do some taser stuff with us. He has some trainings on that. So he fits that great role. But the way trainings are now and the way policies are now, we implemented a program with Power DMS and literally he has over 100 things to do on his Power DMS. He's got to sign all the policies. He's got to do all the trainings. And not that he's not going to do it, but that's a constant issue with reserves. So I wanted to put the reserves where they should fit with other agencies that have reserves. There's not a ton of agencies that are still having reserves, but if we have somebody that comes along, like a blue pin or a blue pin's somebody that's graduated the police academy, if we have somebody like that, it's great to be able to put them in a reserve spot and they can fill in, but it's not something, it's hard to find a newer person, train them, because what happens when we do that is if they don't come to our agency, if we don't have an opening, they're gonna go somewhere else. And so we spent a lot of money and time and resources to train a reserve. But I kind of put a pay scale of like $21 to $27, depending on their ability level and their thing. But we have one right now. If I find another one, great. If I don't, great.
Mhm.
The only thing else I did was the administrative assistant. I think it shows on yours like a 21. I proposed a $25 an hour. And the reason I did that was I did the research behind what our administrative assistants make in other places. So administrative assistants in other areas that I checked made between $25 an hour to $32 an hour. When we look at administrative assistants and what they do for the police department, I came from Old Town, so I hired 2 administrative assistants when I was there. And it's not something that's just a regular administrative job. With our administrative assistant, they're going to see things that other administrative assistants are going to see. They're going to see things that police officers see. They have to have confidentiality. And we just added body cams, and we have to have somebody that can deal with all that body cam footage. And we don't have officers to do that. That's going to be on the administrative assistant. So we're giving her a lot of responsibilities, especially in doing a lot of court stuff. She's more than just that administrative assistant for us. And, you know, if we were to hire an administrative assistant, they would go through much of the same process that a police officer would. So, you know, I would make them go through a polygraph, which I'm allowed to do because of the sensitive information they see. And, you know, that's hard to hire somebody to be able to pass the polygraph, pass the psychological, that sort of stuff. So that's why I wanted to move her. She's at 20 right now. That's why I wanted to move her up to where other administrative assistants are making in the you know, Orono, Old Town, Hamden. I checked with. They're similar size departments as us.
Mhm. I thought last year that we got funding from the education RSU for the school
Yeah,
resource.
I think that's in there.
It says 0 for last year approved.
For last year, you mean?
Yeah, the FY 2025 column.
All I can show you is on this year's one, it's 25%, right?
We're paying 25%, they pay 75%.
Right.
Last year, though,
You're looking at your revenues again, which I told you I had not corrected yet.
so these are in error?
Yeah, all of these revenues that are showing up on these pages, they have not been updated.
So what we're requesting on the SRO salary is $16,416.
Right.
And then the school pays
The school pays the
3 times that, yeah.
It's just hard to tell what the budget was last year. This front page is the only thing that tells me what our budget was last year versus what it is this year. So
Yeah.
without this being correct, it's hard for me to
Yeah.
read it.
How many,
go
how
ahead.
many officers do you have right now,
So
full time?
including me, so let's see, we have eight.
Eight?
Yeah.
We have budgeted for 12, or 13 with the resource officer for 12, including you.
Yeah.
How many did we have this last budget? Because, well, I'm getting at, because I was on council last year.
Right.
And the big piece that, like, I don't like seeing like us budgeting for, 12 full-time officers when we've only ever had 6 months. I was here on the council for 9 years. 6 months out of those 9 years, we had full staff. Other than that, we've never had full staff police. So we're budgeting for and raising the money for these wages and then just reappropriating the money elsewhere.
Right.
But last year was said we were guaranteed to be at 12 right after the budget.
So yeah, 12 plus the SRO, right?
So did we have 12 right after the budget or not too long after?
I don't know.
Aside from the chiefs?
Yeah, so basically we we didn't have that, right? So, I mean, we had one, did you have one or two people leave?
We had 3 people hired shortly after, and 2 people have contracts. So we still have 4.
But you have 8 with 3 more on the way.
I have 3 conditional offers of employment right now, and then another one that's open. So, and I kind of look at that like, but you have to kind of look at this like how, when I hire them, because it's important, because even the ones that have conditional hires, they're going to take a polygraph on the 15th of May. Then the next week they take a psychological. Then I'll get them hired. Then I get them on the list for the academy. Academies run twice a year, August and January. I'm already on the bubble for getting them in the August academy. Hopefully I can, but it's not a guarantee. So that 4th one, I'm going to continue to try to hire, because the problem is if you don't hire them, somebody else is going to hire them. And if we don't bring them on, and obviously some of them aren't going to be able to do a whole lot until they go to the academy. So what we try to do, and I did this at Old Town, was you have to hire them to get them on the list. In order to get them on the list, they have to have a data hire, they have to start, and then they get to be on the list. But that brings the question of if there's what they call phase 1 and phase 2. It's like the reserve part of it. So at least they can get that training and be able to start on the road a little bit with an FTO. If they don't have that, we're going to have to find them clerical, administrative stuff to do, trainings to do, so that they're on the list. It's just the way the law enforcement is working right now. We used to be able to put John Doe slots on the list and hire them August 1st and send them to the academy August 15th, but we can't do that. Won't let us do that. So my objective is to continue looking for the next one and hire the next one. And I mean, these ones are in the conditional hire phase, not to say that there isn't something in their background. I bet you 50% of the time we get rid of them. Orno's been trying to hire one officer for a year, and every time they hire somebody, something comes up. It's not a great one.
So these conditional ones they're not police officers that other.
No, and that's a hard thing, right? Like, so that's a hard thing trying to grab people from other agencies and bring them to our agency. Everybody's trying to do that, but that's always been a tough sell. And we have to buy them if they come from another agency. So that brings that question too, right? So I forget what it is. It's well over $50,000 for an academy grad within the first year of them graduating. The state made a law back in the early 2000s where basically you have a set price. So if we lose somebody, same thing, we're going to get a set price from whoever steals them.
But only for 1 year after they graduate.
No, 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, it goes down every year.
Okay.
The price goes down every year.
Academy turn them out a full class? Or?
They are. They only can. I will say the director's done a really great job at the newer director at taking more people, but they're at, I think, like 70 is the max. And the old director would only take 60. So, and that was tough. And if you have a cadre in the academy, you automatically get your people in the academy. So somebody like the state police has a cadre, which is the instructor. They might have 20 cadets. They get all of them in there. So then we would get bounced back.
This problem's not going to go away.
No, it hasn't. It's been an issue. Before COVID, they tried to do 3 academies a year, and then they had COVID, and that caused the whole problem. But yeah, one of the problems.
They didn't do academy for 2 years, did they?
Well, they did it. It was just modified, and it was really modified on how they did it. And it was a really big pain in the butt. And that was during the time where they were going to do 3 academies, and they ended up not doing that.
What's the professional membership that went from 3,000 to 35? Is that-
Sure. Yeah, so this is where I put a lot of contractual services. You know, I came from a place where we had a lot of technology, and you know that's where law enforcement's going is technology. There's a lot of stuff with that. So, you know, we added a lot of things. Some of the things got added before I started. There's many different softwares that we use that we need to continue to use. You know, for example, Powered EMS is a program that we use now that I've used for over a decade. Mark Leonard brought it here before I came in. Basically, it plays a critical role in policy management. We have to continually update policy. You can see, like, with our police involved shooting that we had, luckily I was able to get a lot of those policies in place before that happened. And that Powered EMS helps with that because basically everything is in one system. All our training, everything's there as far as reading policy, updating policy. We use a company called Derigo Software, and Derigo, one of the things they do is policy management. There's so many different things that update all the time: domestic violence laws, homeless, you know, rules and regulations. And when those update, we always have to update the policy, and we actually pay this company to update our policies. And it's a pretty normal practice that a lot of agencies are using. I used it in Old Town too. So, you know, there's fees. I put in there a scheduling software program right now. It drives me crazy. It's on a bulletin board, and it just is written down. And we, you know, the scheduling software is going to help us schedule overtime appropriately, make sure that we don't have any grievances when it comes to scheduling overtime. It'll tell me who exactly is working. It'll, you know, centralize all that information. And, you know, it'll somewhat streamline the payroll process too a little bit for us, as it'll allow us to, it will have a better tracking on what we use overtime for through using a program like that, you know, through events, through, you know, just sick and vacation overtime. We can track all that through that software. So it's a lot of software types of stuff.
You all have the cameras now?
We have the cameras. The cameras are in there. That's under,
Capital.
I think it's under Taser leasing. We actually renamed it Axon because it has to do with the body cams and the police Taser leasing. So that's a yearly cost. We already paid the first year already. So it's a yearly cost of $19,000.
It's on their last page,
Page,
Yeah.
49.
So that has two things in it. It has the body cams, and then it has the Axon Taser lease too. So a lot of these camera companies now, they do it like that as far as leasing them. So that's what we went with the cameras. The tasers, kind of the same thing. I think Mark got about half the people into Taser 7s last year. And, you know, this is the extra amount on this one is just adding the rest of the department to Taser 7s. And I can tell you the difference between what we've had was Taser 2s and what half the department has right now is Taser 7s. And getting everybody to Taser 7s is just a safer, more effective thing, because the Taser 7, you know, and I'll use the example of the police shooting. I mean, the officer that had tried to tase the subject first was a Taser 2. And with the Taser 2, it just has 2 cartridges in it. They're the same length. With a Taser, and it was a close combat kind of situation. With a Taser 7, what it does is it allows the officer to pick which length of cartridge he wants, so that it all has to do with the spread. So when a taser, if it's a close spread, it's not going to have that neural incapacitation. So what you're looking for is a spread that makes you lock up. If it's close, it's just going to affect that little part of your body. So with the Taser 7, they have two different size cartridges. And all you really have to do is if you're pointing the taser, is tilt it and bring it back and it will go to the other cartridge. So if he had had the Taser 7, he could have changed the cartridge and it might have made a different trajectory on the cartridge. So that's why I wanted to make sure everybody had the Taser 7s.
So how many body cams and tasers do we have?
So. I think that so this just combines the two plans, so that's why. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's where we're at with the body cams is either 11 or 12. The tasers, we have 6, and I think getting 6 more gets us to 12. So,
But we only have 2 officers on duty at one time.
yeah, but so tasers and body cams, they're individual. So basically, they're assigned to that officer because you can't. All the body cams are like that. So every place has it's assigned to you. So when you turn it on and it goes to you, it's everything's function to you. So, you know, for example, with the camera and the taser, they all talk to each other. So for example, the gun, there's a device on the gun holsters now. It's called a signal device. And when the officer pulls his gun, it's going to activate his camera. If the officer pulls his taser, turns it on, it's going to turn on his camera. We've got to make things that are seamless and fast and less that people aren't going to think about it. Because if they have to think, I need to turn my camera on in a critical situation, they're not going to have time. And that's when that's where we're going to get ridiculed a little bit too, is like, why wasn't the body camera on? Why wasn't, when you ended up, using your firearm? Because I didn't have time to turn it on. This eliminates that. You basically pull the gun, it turns on the taser. It turns on the camera.
Is that the only time the camera's turned on? So
No, so there's a device in the cars that'll make it. So anytime they turn on their lights, it'll automatically turn their camera on. And then they're required to turn their camera on when they're dealing with incidents. So if for some reason somebody comes in the lobby, they'll press the button and turn it on. But there's a lot less stress to be able to do that than a critical situation where they need to.
But that all has to be individualized.
Yeah,
Why is that?
it just always like that. It's probably a money making thing for the company itself. But yeah, that's how they've all.
Well, yeah, they'll sell you all the ones you want to buy.
Yeah, but that's how they all work. That's how Axon does it. That's how.
So when
Other
you set up
companies
a
do it.
camera,
Yeah.
somehow you can individualize and recognize the person that's using that camera.
Yeah, even further, that camera I can watch live view.
Oh, I know that, but when you hand the camera to the officer.
Yeah.
What does he have to do to let him know that this camera now recognizes him?
It's
Yeah.
automatically assigned to him. If we didn't do that, we'd have to go into the computer system and change it every time we did.
When you say automatically assigned, what do you mean by that?
It's automatically. So
You didn't have to set it up to his holster so that.
I did online through their portal. So like everything goes to evidence.com, which is Axon's system to capture all that information. So basically, when he turns on when he uses the camera, all that data is assigned to him, and then he has to categorize it. So, and we have retention levels on different things. So certain things stay longer than others. So if you use of force, for example, that would stay in the system for 6 years. The big cost of this isn't the camera. The big cost of this is all the data that it costs. That's the big cost. I mean, you can buy the cameras, probably $1,200. It's the data that we have to store. That is the thing that's going to cost the most money. So we're paying for storage for each officer. That's how they calculate that. That makes sense.
It does, but it doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, data is very cheap. I mean, we all use the video process. It doesn't turn on by a holster or press a button or anything, but there's a lot of data out there. It's all stored on the cloud.
Right.
And, it's pretty basic stuff now. 10 years ago, it wasn't, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So this company is leasing these to us and they're managing all of our data?
they have all the data. We have to manage how we keep it. So like the individual officers, so if they have a traffic stop, they're gonna categorize it as a traffic stop. It'll stay in there for a year unless it has something criminal to do with it.
Yeah, but it goes from the camera probably to the cloud automatically, right?
Yeah.
So if the camera gets damaged, the data is still up in the cloud.
Yes, most likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if the camera got damaged, there's ways that Axon could probably sending the camera to them to.
So you're
retrieve.
paying for a lot of cloud storage
Yeah,
for each individual officer.
Yep.
So about $2,000 a year per officer.
yeah, I mean, I could,
Well, that's what it breaks down. You got 12 officers and you got $26,000 budget on it, so.
yeah, it doesn't break it out quite like that, but yeah.
I just doing some basic math, but that's fine. At least you give me an idea of what we're up against. The retention bonus, has that been working?
Yeah, I mean, people are still here, the ones that started them since I started. So I
We
think that
haven't lost anybody then.
not the only person we lost was the SRO, right, last year, and one officer didn't make FTO, right? Oh, right, the other officer that went. So one was the SRO, who was a kind of a part-time, it was a weird thing. And
We
then,
made a one-year deal with him, hoping that we would make a better new deal at the end of the year.
and then we lost an officer to East Millinocket. And then there was an officer, right, East Mill, and then the probationary officer that didn't pass that field training.
So the retention bonus, you've got 13 at 2,000, so is that a discretionary retention bonus or is there a formula that?
Yeah, so they get $2,000. They get $2,000 a year for 5 years. Yeah.
At their anniversary date.
Right.
They have to make it to their anniversary date.
Right. So that's a 5-year agreement you have with them?
Right. And we started that 2 years ago.
With the contract 2 years ago, yes.
My question on like the scheduling software and
Yeah.
other software, is that a one-time fee or is that a yearly fee?
That's a yearly fee.
And is this new for this budget or is it already in place?
It's new for this budget.
So aside from the MDT there that started in 2024, most of these ones would be all new.
And let me look. The Clear software we've had, that's a software to assist with investigations. Adobe software we started using, that's for redacting and doing reports for Brittany and I. Online training, I moved that from professional development into more of it's our online, how we do all our trainings as far as mandatory trainings, stuff that we don't go to actual trainings for. So, and all our BLS and Department of Labor stuff, we do that. It includes our street references. So those are books that officers use to find fine amounts, ATN numbers, and other enforceable details. The animal control fee, that we may or may not need that. And I can talk about that in a few minutes. The Maine Chiefs of Police Association membership, that's something that we probably haven't paid for before. The Derigo policy development, we had that last year. We're in the second year of that. That's a yearly thing. It'll be a little bit cheaper going forward next year because it'll, instead of being development, it will be maintaining the policies. So right now we've been working on getting all the policies in there. The next year will be, after this year, it'll be maintaining. Powered EMS we had just brought on this year. And that does all our, like I spoke about, all our documentation, training stuff as far as documenting training, maintenance tracking, compliance, law books. Those are something we give the officers. The MBTs and NESPN information sharing. I think that's about it.
So most of these have already been approved by the council.
Some of them have already been, was things that were brought on before I started, and some of them are things that I think need to be brought on.
As a new department head, it happens with every new department head, pretty much everywhere. The first few months, they are making things as they see them best. And sometimes municipalities can be tremendously stressed to keep up with the requests of the department head. So we're not lucky that we have not had the full staff, but regarding this, that has been good.
And then just like, 'cause I know you said the scheduling is done like on a board. Is that how fire department does it too, still? Or do they have their own software?
No, they're wholly separate.
Do they have their own software that they're using?
I don't know if they're using software or not,
No?
For what?
For scheduling.
No,
or fire.
they don't.
Would this software work for both?
Yep.
I mean,
I did the same thing in Old Town. So Old Town Police Department and Fire Department use the same scheduling software.
I mean, just my thinking is that we're paying that much, but you can use it for multiple departments. And those two departments would actually be the ones.
and I don't know, I'd have to look and see. I could certainly look and see what the cost would be for adding more people, if there is a cost to that, or if there's a set. Some of those ones are
Per user. or-
right. Some of them are per user. Some of them are up to 50 users, or right. Like
Just something to,
they don't
Consider
care
if they're-
about the
if
small.
they're doing it, on a full board or something. I know do that.
I can certainly ask those.
Then my only thing, I see it says in here for the event wages, it says wages for in TIF for events, so we have the wages broken out here in the budget, but it's offset by TIF revenue? Is it- So we took it out of
Have you talked to Ruth about the TIF and if
A
those
little
are
bit.
in
No.
there?
No, I have not.
So these could be removed if Ruth does have these wages already in TIF.
Okay. I know that was one thing, I mean, I know as a council, we were trying to get a lot of the things that didn't really belong in TIF,
Mhm.
out of TIF, but we always said that wages were formed,
Mhm.
that should be in TIF. Those,
Under professional membership, you've combined both dues and software in there. Is that, am I reading that correctly? Page 45. It starts out with, looks like it's dues to associations. And then about halfway down, it switches to, I guess, police app annual.
Oh, yeah.
And what you mentioned also was Therago and then you've got the main law enforcement accreditation.
Oh, yeah. So the main law enforcement accreditation thing, that's for getting our accreditation. So one thing I was really proud of in Old Town was we were the first department ever to be accredited. There's about 45 departments accredited now. I'm actually on the main chief's accreditation committee. It involves 5 chiefs throughout the state, a sheriff, the colonel of the state police, and the director of the academy. And basically what it is the program that's 162 standards. And it's a best practice thing. So basically we want to be able to ensure that we're doing the right things all the time. And being part of the accreditation is that. So this is for the accreditation standards, which goes into the Power DMS thing. So that's what that is.
And scheduling software,
That was what as far as the scheduling software, that was the software that we talked about just a minute ago.
that's a yearly fee.
Yeah, that's a yearly fee.
Who wrote the software?
It's called NeoGov. So it's the same company that deals with Power DMS. You'll find that a lot of these places, it's the same sort of company. There's a couple different softwares you can use. We use something called Schedule Express in Old Town. I've looked at all of them. And really the schedule software program through them is much more user-friendly. So that's kind of what that is.
But this is just to schedule your officers when they're working.
Yeah,
when they're not
and
working.
actually this goes down a little bit after the first year because of the setup fee. So they have to set it up and then it'll go down. It'll be a yearly fee, but it'll be less than this.
So this is new scheduling software.
Yeah.
What did we use last year?
That's what I'm talking. Basically, we just use the board. They write it on a board. It kind of drives me crazy. So this will help kind of. It really helped in Old Town figure out what we were using for overtime and where we were using overtime and how much we were using and give us a better idea of that.
Well, buying software is one thing, but a yearly fee of $7,000 seems to be pretty steep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll go
That's why
down.
out there.
I think it'll go down by $2,000. I don't want to quote me on that, but it's going to go down after the first year.
Usually you have large initial one-time cost and then lower annual.
I mentioned the animal control. I can talk about that if you want. So animal control, see that's kind of gone up. Currently, or we did for the last few years, we've always used an animal control officer that we've hired and given a weekly stipend of $175 a week. When I got hired here, the animal control officer got done. We put out for a new ACO. We got somebody that had been our ACO years ago, and she was really gung-ho about doing it. And then she kind of got started and just, it wasn't really for her. It was just, gotten older and she just got in a position where she I kind of get nervous about going to, ACO, some of these houses, which I can understand. I don't go to a house without, all my tools on my belt. So, I get it. So she got done. I was trying to figure out ways to, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? In Old Town, we used the Penobscot County for the ACO. And so I reached out to the county and see if we could try that. And we're doing that right now on a trial basis. So she's contracted through the county. So we aren't incurring any cost as far as dealing with the car or, as an employee, all the training, stuff like that. She just is doing it per call. So she does it per call for 17 something an hour and then mileage. So I kind of looked at what our calculations of our calls were for the year and what mileage might be, and that's why I came up with the 11,000. But it's kind of on a trial basis right now. So for the 3 months, she's gonna try it, see if it works. I met with her today, actually. She's said it's actually working out very well. So she deals with about 16 or 17 different towns. Some of them are unorganized, some of them are like Old Town or Eddington. So she travels quite a bit, and her mileage is based on where she lives as her home base, which is Greenbush. So it's about 30 to 40 miles, so that's, and it's about, depending on what she's doing for calls. Now, I've talked to the officers about certain calls that the ACO probably dealt with, we can deal with. So there's certain calls like barking dogs, we can go deal with barking dogs, right? So that might cut down on the cost too. So it might even be less than we're paying, especially with, maintaining the vehicle and stuff like that.
I know, like you remember last year, we had an issue with a dog on, that's
Kurt's
where we
Farm.
found out, yeah, where there's not really a whole lot of anything that you can really do for the most
Now,
part.
beyond barking dogs couldn't be brought under control, but as I understand it, maybe the chief has a different idea, but there really was very little in the law that really could do.
Yeah, it's more of an ordinance thing. Or I actually looked at the animal ordinance today, and that's probably something we're gonna have to address a little bit. And there was an LD law in the legislature, but I don't think it passed. But it was to deal with barking dogs.
They were in like 2 or 3 meetings in a row, but it's almost nothing we could do, so.
Well, it was said that the dogs had crossed from one property to another and had been threatening to the people that lived on the property where they were, but then other people said that wasn't the case, so it was a back and forth.
All the calls that you make, your officers make, are they within the town limits or do they get sent out beyond town limits?
Most of them are in Lincoln. That's where we would do any of our stuff.
Or do you get calls outside of Lincoln?
If we did, it would be to back somebody up if we had to. I mean, it would be an officer safety thing where, a deputy was in dire need of us and we would have to back them up. I mean, it
So
would be,
like if there's a 911 call comes in from Springfield or Lee or something like that, we don't respond to that.
No.
Same thing with like Chester and Wynn.
no, we wouldn't respond to any calls for service. I mean, we would go, the only reason we would go anywhere is to back somebody up if we had to back somebody up.
If they, do they request backup?
Right, yeah. It would be no different than here. I mean, if we didn't rely on the sheriff's office for backup right now, we would be really, really in a hard spot. Same thing for them sometimes. If
Mhm.
there's a really bad situation and they need us, then we need to help them.
The state police help out at all?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll tell you is here is I love the ability that people are always stopping by the PD, the sheriff's office, the warden service, the state police, they all come to the PD, which is kind of a nice change for in Old Town. I didn't see them very often.
Can you, on the wellness, on the gym membership, so you buy 12 people memberships, is that through town or is that wherever they want to go? Is that a
So-
benefit in the union contract? Or is that-
No, it's something that I brought. I think it would be something they would probably bring next year in the union contract anyways. It's something where I was really surprised when I came here. There's no way for them to, I mean, there is, I mean, they can go to the fire departments, but it's very small. It's really not adequate for what they want to do. So we're asking people to do certain things and be in shape, but we're not providing them any means to be able to do
Right.
that. So what I did with that was Brittany reached out to the local gym to see what they would give us for a deal.
Right.
And that's what we got for that kind of deal. If somebody wanted to go to someplace else, they could do that too, but that's the limit that we would pay. So basically,
And would it be any, obligations, like if you pay for the membership, yes, you'll go, like, a couple
Yeah.
times a week or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean-
Paying for it and no one's showing up.
right, I'm not just gonna pay the membership to pay the membership. I'm gonna
Right.
have them tell me that they're going to the gym,
Right.
and we would reimburse them for the gym membership.
Okay. And then on the wellness visits, what's that?
So wellness visits, it's something that you've seen start to kind of be incorporated through agencies. I mean, unfortunately, you see where officers, firefighters, they see a lot of things, and we need to be able to provide some sort of wellness for them. Last year, I incorporated this in Old Town where everybody would go to a wellness visit, and including me. So, and I would go to the wellness visit, and they're about an hour.
Is it a mental health thing? or a
Mental
physical
health thing. It's a mental health thing.
Okay. all
So
right.
basically, it allows them to talk about whatever they want and kind of see if they need any help, give them support. I know nothing of what they talk about. So I won't, unless they tell their danger to themselves or others, I'm not going to know anything. Then if they need more resources, we have more resources for them. We have an EPA program, stuff like that, that we can get them. We can get them more assistance if they need that. There's actually a program that was just on the news last night. There's a guy named Wally Frazier who's working on trying to get more mental health and get that paid for by scholarships and stuff like that. But what I tell people with this is, making it mandatory for everybody to go is really important, because you might be like, I do not need this. And it's like, that's fine. But if you go, somebody else is going and they might need it. So if I made it voluntary, some people probably wouldn't go, right? That's why I would want to make it mandatory. Some places are doing actually a stipend, like Waterville does a stipend if you go to the wellness visit, and that's through their union contract. But, I think this is a great start for that. I've actually put in for a grant for it, so it might cover it, but it might not. There's a grant that was through the state. There was $2 million. Everybody was requesting money. So basically we did two different things. I asked for wellness visits, but then what they were doing was they split the money up into counties, and the more departments that work together and came up with a program, they would give that money to them. So there's actually a program that Hamden, Old Town, us, Beasley, Orono all work together, police and fire, and it's for cardiovascular health. So it costs about $850 per person. Obviously, that's a big expense. So hopefully we get that, and that'll basically, there's a company that does these cardiovascular testing and ensures that safe. But I think this is a good start with the officer wellness. So that's why I put that.
And the department meetings, that's just like your staff meetings, just get together once a month or something like that.
Yeah, the department meetings are to deal with, like, if we have, trainings and stuff like that. It covers some of, possibly food for that sort of stuff. So.
Probably like on cruises.
Oh, let's talk about cruisers. Yeah.
That's in the capital.
That's in capital. So cruisers from my time have gone up. So what I did was I looked at a couple different things. I looked at what would one cruiser cost, what's the best avenue. We have We have 8 vehicles in service right now. 5 of them, they probably have over that now. Anywhere from 92,000 to 163,000 miles. So we're spent in the last year, this was updated yesterday, and this does not include tires and oil.
It doesn't include all the company emotions, it may have a couple in there that's outside of.
So basically, we're we've spent $19,000 on vehicle repairs in the last year. So my kind of proposal for this, we can buy one cruiser for around $70,000. That's installed, everything's installed. Or we can enter into a lease agreement and get 5 cruisers and for 81,000. It says 8058. My updated quote is 81,328.50.
But that number that you have is with us utilizing public works for a long time.
So I mean, if you look at this, I mean, you add that 20,000, you're at $90,000 a year right now for, you know, we're paying for cruiser stuff. Where if we had 5, the leasing, you get 5 cruisers, brand new cruisers, and you know you're going to have little maintenance costs
But that's 80,000 every year.
for the 5 years. Yep.
And
And-
they guarantee to hold it at 80,000 or
Yep. And
for
you-
5 years? They're
for
gonna
the
hold
5 years. Yep.
it. So $350,000.
Yeah. 340. Yeah, 359.98. And I mean, honestly, I asked the other day that same question because I was like, so with the cars going up, things like that, is this going to change? And he told me this was the price. So,
So they'll hold the price for 5 years and then you got to negotiate it again.
well, so after those 5 years, the lease isn't like you're giving it, you have to buy it out. The lease at the end of 5 years, you can buy the car for $1. So then we can use those cars for other things too, like, you know, the fire department needed, or the public works needed them, or other places need them. We can utilize them.
Or if you need all new ones, then you just.
Right. I think it's something that a lot of departments are doing now, where they're going to this lease thing, and it's saving on the maintenance part of it, and it's just kind of a set price. Like, this is what it's going to cost for cruisers every year, and you kind of know that, right? I like that.
That's what we did with the public works,
We've done some public works,
because
but we'll be discussing it again next week.
we did all, or we all did, but I did the math out. If you could buy a plow truck and keep it for 10 years in mint condition, then you save money. As we've seen since I've been involved, it never happened. We're putting 1 year, we'll put $40,000 into the engine, and then $60,000 into a frame or a body. So you're just dropping money after money, whereas if you just lease it, then you know what your set cost is for X amount of years. You have very little to no maintenance on leased years, because I mean, tires and
Right.
oil changes, but.
And I mean, these are just, the thing I've seen with cruisers over the years is when more than one person drives them, they all drive them different. They're turning on cars, they're, you know, stopping, going, they're running idle all day long. I mean, it's not your regular car that's got 120,000 miles on it. It's used. I mean, a cruiser that's got 100,000 miles on it, it's a big liability after that.
So last 5 years of the money you've gone.
I think so. Yeah, I think it would be, that's what it is. I mean, if we're buying one car a year, that's kind of,
Typically with leases too, so while it's leased, it's all under, like, all the major parts are all under warranty.
well, I think, well, obviously it would have a warranty up to a certain amount of mileage, I would assume. I mean, I think part of it is that, you know, you're getting a deal on that part of it. So I'm not guessing the whole 5 years would be leased. It would probably be the mileage would be depending on the warranty. So I can,
Some of you may recall when I first came here, there was an idea on the council that we could get away with buying a single police cruiser every 2 years. There was just no way for that to be reasonable. We had a fleet of cars over there that were, you wouldn't want to go. And it's gotten a little better, but it hasn't gotten a whole lot better. So his proposal is to make it a whole lot better immediately.
What do you think the salvage value will be on the fleet that you have now?
I don't know, it depends on what you guys want to do with those. I mean, I would think some of them could go to other departments that needed vehicles. I mean, like I've got one that's got 160,000 miles on it. I think Stu, the one that Stu drives for the detective's car, and I think he prays every time he goes to Bangor that he's going to make it back. I've already picked him up a couple times, so. But I mean, I think there's a couple cars that a couple cars that we would still keep in the fleet, and then there would be the other cars would be changed out. It might work well too that if the ACO thing works out, we won't even need to have an ACO car. So that solves the problem with one thing.
Well, the problem with keeping your existing fleet is now you've got a maintenance burden where you just tried to eliminate your maintenance
Right.
burden.
But we're going to take these top 5 out of the existence, and none of the other cars are going to be frontline cars. So basically, the other cars will deal with the SRO and the detective sort of thing. So,
But you still have maintenance if it doesn't start.
well, yeah, I mean,
Blows a motor.
you're going to go from having a detective's vehicle that had 163,000 miles on it to 33,000 miles on it. So,
Right.
that's
But
going
you
to make.
still have maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some maintenance, but I think it's going to be significantly less than what it was.
Yeah, because if you're driving the car right now with 160,000 miles, it blows an engine.
Right,
Well, putting either a new engine in or buying a new vehicle.
right. And we spent, on that car alone, we spent over $3,000.
That $3,000 was last highway, that was last highway issue, that was the $3,000. That was just one issue.
A few months ago, we began to discuss vehicles for other departments. And again, this is a growing pain, but this town had not had the idea that there needed to be cars for people doing other things. We've had a discussion about insurances. When an individual uses their personal motor vehicle for town business, unless they have had an add-on to their personal insurance, they're really not insured when they're driving that vehicle for the town. And that's a hard thing to settle to, but we're lucky enough to have Ed here in our staff now, and he was with insurance companies for 30 years, and he really knows, and he came and made the presentation before the council that we're actually in danger. And so I don't know how we do this. We've made no decision as to how to improve this yet. And people say, well, 20 years ago, we didn't need cars. Well, 20 years ago, we didn't have the dams. We didn't own the dams. We were not checking the levels of the dams weekly. Someone has to drive to all those places weekly. When we send a firefighter, an EMT, a police officer to school in Augusta, if they're driving their own vehicle and we're paying mileage, they're really not insured. And so we need to do something about that. The same is true when we send people from Public Works. They go to training events too. More of those are up in Aroostook County, but at any rate, they're driving their own personal vehicle. The council says, well, you've got a pickup truck. True enough, we got a pickup truck. And when there's an EMT going to Augusta on the same day, the 2 Public Works people are going to Holton, they have trouble using that one vehicle to get them to both places. So we really could use some additional vehicles. And I know that's not a source of happiness to think that, but it's going to be a lot more happiness than the day we have the disaster. We had the 2 electric cars, many people laughed. And were they perfect? No, but then what is exactly perfect? The time on those is gone, and they are gone. So people who were using those instead of their personal vehicle are back to using their personal vehicle. And I got lucky. I got to Baileyville 90 days after the firefighter came out of Woodland Village, broadsided a car on Route 1 and killed a couple of people. I was lucky. I managed to personally avoid that mess. But they went through this exact same thing because lo and behold, even though the person with the car was insured for their own personal purposes, they were not insured for what they did. So big problem there. So we could use to keep a few better cars.
Is the lease unlimited mileage or?
Yep. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that, no. Yeah, because I was always like, well, if it's not worth doing, right? So that's why you get it at the end of the lease. They don't care if the mileage. Well,
Was that the only capital item, just the cruisers?
I think so, everything else is put into the budget.
Yep.
Some of which you could debate maybe should be capital, but you put them in capital, you could debate they ought to be in operating, you put them in operating, you could debate they should be in capital, so I don't see an issue.
Is there any other discussion?
What about this wrap,
Oh, yeah,
the safety restrict?
under equipment purchases?
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is something that I used in Old Town too. It's a system where we're dealing with people that are unruly and stuff like that. So how do you deal with it, right? Used to be back in the day, you could throw them in the back of the ambulance and the ambulance would transport them for you. Maine EMS really doesn't like that now. So there's all kinds of rules to that. So this is a system where we can put somebody in a restraint and it ties them, it wraps their legs around and it puts them upright so they're not laying flat, and basically puts them in a position where we can still put them in the back of a cruiser safely, transport them with one officer to the jail, and they can't move around. Because if they're combative, you're going to have problems with people in the back of the cruiser. You're not going to be able to transport them. Or you're going to put an officer in the back of the car and they're going to fight them the whole way, and then we're going to have injuries. So we were using this system for a few years in Old Town, and basically it made it a lot easier for us dealing with people.
if you only get one, how, so where is it?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a place where we put it in one cruiser. We probably put it in the supervisor's cruiser. And then obviously if we need it, either the supervisor hopefully is on as we get more people. If not, somebody can run back and get it and bring it to the scene.
Yeah.
We can able to control that.
So this is something you'd use if handcuffs doesn't work?
It would, you keep the handcuffs on, but it would be more it would keep them basically locked up altogether. So I actually have a good picture of it, but it's
They
wraps
won't
their,
be kicking at the glass and
no,
stuff
they
like
couldn't.
And
They
we've
were,
had a lot of that in the
right?
past.
It wraps their legs up. It brings their body up so they're at are sitting up, so they can't lay down. Can't have any issues where somebody is in the back, because a lot of these times they fight, then they pass out or they're on drugs or whatever. So that takes that away.
I just thought, I was curious, 'cause I like that, I just didn't.
Yeah.
Want to,
Yeah, and that's one of those things where that's a one-time cost.
How long has that system been out on the market?
I don't know. I think we had it over 5 years in Old Town. Yeah.
So no legal issues coming back with people saying that?
No, I
It's
think if
restraining
anything,
them
it's
too much.
probably saved people where it keeps them restrained properly, and you're not fighting with them. They're not getting hurt. You're not getting hurt.
But they never tried to bring action against anybody? trying to
Not that
use
I
it?
know of, no. But I mean, anybody can bring action against anybody for anything. So nowadays, but I haven't seen it.
But only if you're on drugs and stuff, that would help because they wouldn't suffocate or choke. or
Right.
that,
That's why having them be able to
being
set up.
upright
Yep.
is a safe position.
Yep.
They can't get out of it.
I just thought it was good, I saw that, I said, I gotta ask about that, 'cause I thought it was a good idea.
Any differences like in cost to insure a rented vehicle or lease throughout the zone? Any downside that way?
I don't really know the answer. I think they're pretty much the same, but I think you'll get a whole lot of detail on how that works when you get Dennis Bowen here.
Dennis wouldn't know about the insurance. That would be me.
Well, I bet he.
No, I haven't seen no difference in the cost of the lease versus own as far as that. Because, you know, sometimes you finance the vehicle too. The only thing is they want to know who you're financed through. And they do the same thing for this. Who is your lease through? That way, if something does happen to the vehicle before it's paid off, then the whatever cost that you get, if you total the vehicle, is going to be split between.
With these leases, probably similar to like the equipment, from them, be more or less black.
Right, at the end, you're going to own it.
I mean, it's
But-
basically the same thing.
Until the lease is paid off, of course, the insurance is going to pay the lease company and the town. They're not just going to pay the town the money. They want to make, yeah,
That's what that wrap looks like.
so.
Oh, I was trying to see if there's any downside to it.
That's what it looked like.
Not as far as insurance, no.
So really just,
I did have one last question on the lease. Does that include all the wraps on
Yeah,
the
that's
outside and equipped and everything? Because I know that's always been a
that's-
sticking point when we buy vehicles, that it never includes any of the.
yeah, so that's actually the company that I'm using. He's ITS. So he's the company that he's dealing with buying the cars, you know, putting the equipment in the cars, lettering the cars. It's all included.
Okay.
Yes, you do those,
The same thing that we're running now. Yeah. Yeah. That, like, so they would all be Fords. So it'll be the same thing that we have a couple Dodges now, and it drives me crazy, different cars, you know, so.
That would be better if they were the same.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one, you know, one key that opens all the cars. Like, it drives me crazy now. We have to like go find 6 different sets of keys. So
Well, we never had spike mat.
we do. I just needed another one
Okay.
for one of the other cars.
I guess the only thing I would say is if we do elect to go with the leases, that we do fully salvage the fleet that we have. Don't try to absorb it into the town as far as having vehicles for everybody.
You were saying retain none for other departments?
Right, right. Salvage what you have.
We've still got to solve this question of individuals driving their personal vehicle and technically uninsured.
Is it in the budget? No. Okay, so it'll be next time.
And is that a new law? Because healthcare workers, we drive all over and we're driving to the company, but we're driving our personal vehicle.
There's arrangements that can be made, but you have to pay for it. And I don't know in that case, but I do know in this case, not new at all.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I put 50,000 miles a year on and I got paid per mile, the IRS standard deduction, and it was a personal vehicle. I prefer that over a company vehicle.
But if you have the big wreck, unless you have bought the add-on to your insurance, you're gonna discover at that moment you're uninsured. I'd ask you to be happy about it.
42 years, never happened. And I have been in accidents. I have been in accidents.
But it only takes one to hurt the town. One person gets in an accident, kills somebody, and then
And I'm sure, like, if they know that too, they're looking for the deeper pockets. So,
Yeah.
right?
With healthcare workers, you get driving all over the place.
Mhm.
And they were all in their personal cars.
Right.
And then we used to go Millinocket, Dexter, Howland, Lincoln, those were all the same, and you'd be driving to all those buildings in a day in your own car.
I mean,
It'd be interesting to see.
to put it in perspective too, like if one of our employees was in their vehicle,
Right.
so if it wasn't here, but like say Howland, they hit a telephone, like one of the light poles, because we just had that happen like a year, like, happened like 2 years ago.
$250,000.
That happens
Yeah,
every
so
few months.
$250,000 to replace a light pole, the same standard. Yeah, and try to, your insurance goes, well, I'm not gonna pay for it, you're under,
You were
Town's
at work,
responsible.
you were on,
Yeah.
you were on the clock.
town's gonna be writing a check for $250,000.
Yes, I think there needs to be a limit on it, but if you don't have one with public works, they go to training, and they'll be driving first recorder, one time pickup. If one cruises would be probably half the price to go to. If you don't have something, the pickup's going from the public works, and then you run the dump truck to go do something. I think at some point it would offset the fire department, we're gonna take the pickup. I mean, I'll be yelling at the summer, so we're getting-
Well, and again, there are days, there's no month in which there are not days in which some of the EMTs are in a class in one town in Maine, and some of the others are 100 miles away or more.
I guess in my head, it would be cheaper to, and most instead of.
Well, on a day it's snowing, they don't want the pickup truck to leave here anyway.
I'm more on the side of keeping ones that are in good condition and, you know, where, that match together areas that we never gonna, they're gonna be low miles and stuff. It's gonna be like police where they're putting 40,000 miles a year. We had something with 30,000 miles, it might get 10,000 miles a year. I think it was roughly like 10 or 12 or so putting on the electric
I think
cars.
we put 6,000 total on each of those in the time that we had them.
So,
A lot of it's me going back and forth to the bank, 4 miles a day.
so the car, I mean, if we kept 2 or 3 of them, then they would last years. They probably rust out before we pause on them.
I think like Dennis was one of those ones.
Yeah, right.
You want to pick up, so you didn't have the car, they didn't have to pick up, your own.
If it's cost effective, though, you have to use your intelligence. I tell the following because I enjoy telling it because it's kind of funny. But it's true. Police cars aren't good for as many miles as your family passenger car because of the way they're treated during operation. In Brewer, old police cars then got handed down. I went to the National Fire Academy at Emmitsburg, Maryland, and I went in a car that was given to the fire department from the police department. I went to Emmitsburg, blah, blah, blah. And halfway back across Pennsylvania, the car wasn't going any further whatsoever. I left it in a place in Pennsylvania, took a bus and came back to Bangor Brewer. I don't know today where that car is. Last thing I knew was in Pennsylvania, waiting for the close of its life.
I mean, if you want to keep the vehicles, so as associate them with the departments that need it. Which is basically turning over potentially $100,000 worth of vehicles and say, there you go. 2 years ago, the budget for cruises was 40,000. Last year it was 60,000. This year we're proposing 80,000. Next year's going to be 100, and the year after that, 120.
I think easily could be.
It could be go up. I mean,
When I first started on the council, it was like 15,000 for a cruiser. So
I
that's
can
how much it's gone up.
I can tell you, I've been bidding out cars since 15, and it was $28,000 back then, $30,000, and now it's almost over 50. So just what the cost.
I can't see people.
Function of code enforcement is to go out pretty much daily somewhere, pretty much daily. And that person should not be using their own personal.
Well, code enforcement is probably not going to be acceptable to a sedan either. Where he has to go, he needs a pickup with some ground clearance, probably a four-wheel drive.
An SUV, yeah.
So those cruisers aren't going to help him any.
I mean, I think they would get pretty much everywhere we get, right? Yeah, they're all with drive, yeah.
And is there a way to track the maintenance on everything we own so it really gets done in a timely manner?
It's up to the department.
Right. We track,
themselves to do that.
Brittany does a great job tracking maintenance on what we're doing, so I can tell you every car, how much it costs.
We started doing that last year after this meeting, when you asked about public works. We started a spreadsheet that shows exactly what public works does and when the first row and what they were on, what we request.
So like when it's ready for like the 30,000 or 45,000 mile check, I think get some kind of thing that will show up. How it will change it, whatever, or whether you use it. Yeah. So public works.
Their mileage every day when they start their shift. And then also the sergeants doing what they do now, do a monthly check of the vehicle. So they check on it, so make sure that everything's up to date, that all the equipment's in there.
For all the departments, we attempt to use the public works mechanic to the greatest degree possible. But we've only had a public works mechanic a few years. I was in Bangor, the manager of the motor pool, Bob Dawes, had been with Ryder Truck for a number of years before that, and he told us everything on wheels is towed by another vehicle or could be the tow vehicle. Every 13 of them needs a mechanic. We are nowhere near that.
What I remember when we were hiring the mechanic was for the basic maintenance, like, oil change, gotta, change tire or something, maybe, brakes maybe, but not like, new engine, transmission. We'd be going to the mechanic for that, the dealership or something for that.
There's a lot of the heavier things than we might think, but again, it's one person. And just,
Especially in winter, like they're not gonna have time.
just the
most
public
likely.
works fleet in winter will consume all this time.
Well, and today with all the electronics and stuff, really, I'm sure a lot of it has to go to the dealership. I mean,
Well, some
I
does,
mean,
yes.
I'm sure the basics you can still do, but they're pretty much, it's difficult to work on vehicles unless you have appropriate computer
Mhm.
things to click in with each different vehicle.
I'm crying in the next few years. Since the mills are all right for the road, we just.
I don't really know about that, but we have no shortage.
One thing I found since I started here is there's a lot of bigger issues that go on. Stu is really, really busy. For the amount of people with the populations in this town.
Say 5 or 6 years ago, you didn't see anything. It's unbelievable. It's like the road. Just everything.
Do you have anything else? All right, so we can adjourn.
Great.
Thank you.
Good.
I just appreciate it.
Oh, that's good. Hopefully we'll have more officers up there at some point and we'll see you anymore.